Thanks for taking the time to download the Inside the Jungle podcast. To send along your feedback about this show, send your emails to insidethejungle@spnt.tv.
Well, what I thought was a crazy April Fool's joke, turns out it was not. Great news today out of Cincinnati. The Bengals have signed a kick returner. We'll talk about that. We'll also give our grades as we wrap up our position group series with the quarterbacks and the specialists. That's all coming up on the Wednesday Night Roundtable here at CincyJungle.com. Get in touch.
This is the Wednesday Night Roundtable
with Nick Zuberling, Mickey Menzer, Anthony Cosenza, and Scott Bantel.
Happy April Fool's Day, everybody. Welcome to Inside the Jungle, the Wednesday Night Roundtable here at CincyJungle.com. Lots to get to this week. I just really thought today was an interesting day if you're a Bengals fan. We had the Bengals trolling the Cleveland Browns with their April Fool's joke over at Bengals.com, and then we had the news that the Bengals signed fan favorite and podcast favorite and Inside the Jungle favorite. Brandon Tate is back as a Bengal. Let's welcome in Scott and AC this week. AC, I'll start with you. How's it going, buddy?
Change, Nicholas. Change.
Right.
I mean, it's abounding in the Queen City. Those boys in orange and black just really know how to change things up and really shake up the roster, don't they?
Change, not even close. Absolutely not even close. Just, I don't understand. We'll talk about that for sure. Glad to have you back, though, this week. Scotty B, with some new equipment there in the studio there at the Bantel household.
Yeah, that's right. Starting to look like a real professional down here in the dungeon. So, Nick, I thought of you today when I saw the Brandon Tate signing come across. I thought no Bengals fan across the country is happier than Nick Zuberling is right now. Dust off that Brandon Tate jersey, baby.
Happy is not the word I would use to describe my emotions when I saw that come across Twitter today. I had a lot of people, in fact, Cody Toomey, who's going to be joining us for our live show at Lachey's, was talking to me today, tweeted to me about the fact that just because he was signed doesn't mean he's going to make this roster. Hello, what team have you been watching the last 13 years? Of course Brandon Tate is going to make this roster. If you don't think he's going to make the roster, you're nuts. Because you're not watching the same team that I am. Here we are. We're a minute in, and I'm already yelling. Brandon Tate, your thoughts, AC?
I've got a bunch.
Lay it on us, because it's one of those nights.
Yeah, I'm going to try and make it as succinct as possible here. But, I mean, if you remember a few weeks back, the Bengals brought in Jacoby Jones for a visit, and, you know, I don't think he would have broken the bank, especially with the amount of space that the Bengals had against the salary cap. And you sit here and you look at that visit and you see that they re-signed Brandon Tate and you go, well, I mean, why wouldn't I would think conceivably that Jacoby Jones would have been an upgrade over Brandon Tate, both as a receiver and a return man. You know, Jacoby Jones has shown over the years that he has the ability to pop a big play, even with the new rules that really hinder kickoff return men. So that one's kind of a head scratcher for me. The other facet too is, you know, they kind of call Brandon Tate a return man and receiver, but I think we all know that he has very limited, if any, kind of contributions as a receiver, and they really keep him on as a return specialist, which a lot of teams don't do anymore because of those same rules I just talked about that go against kickoff return men. You would think that maybe the team looks in the draft for a speedy wide receiver that they can maybe plug into the slot, also kind of have some versatility on the outside, be a deep threat, but also maybe has the ability to return kicks, and that way you kind of kill two birds with one stone, free up another spot on the roster, instead of keeping Brandon Tate as this return specialist, and then you got to struggle to find other receivers. I don't know. I just don't like the move. You know, I joked at the beginning, they preach change, and he's just another signing along with a slew of others that really don't show that much has changed with this team.
And to be fair, Cody, who's in the chat room right now, said he was being sarcastic. And I'm just using you as an example, Cody, because there were a lot of people both on the Cincy Jungle website and some of the comments, as well as on Twitter, defending the move, saying that it was solid and that this is a backup plan in case they can't get that guy in the draft. Which I don't buy it. I absolutely do not buy it. I think that he is the fact that they signed him means he's a lock to be back. That's just my opinion, Scott. And so I'm just my blood is boiling.
Nick, I'm going to be the voice of reason again, like I had to be with Cody when the Bengals signed A.J. Hawk. Kind of the slow down, take a step back. I don't like Brandon Tate either. I'm not a Tate fan, but I don't think he's going to make this roster. I don't think this changes their plan. I think they're still looking for a receiver in the draft that has kick return ability. I think this was simply a insurance plan. Now, it can be debated whether he's a good insurance plan. I would venture to guess that they could find anyone in the NFL that could do what Brandon Tate does. So from that standpoint, I understand what you're saying. If they want an insurance plan, they could probably find a better one. But I don't think the signing of Brandon Tate means he makes the roster. In fact, I still don't think he does make the roster. I think they draft one, maybe two young receivers, one of which is going to be a kick return type person, and I don't think Tate makes this roster.
They've drafted these receivers in the past. Cody Hamilton,
Nick,
guys with speed.
Nick, things are changing.
It depends on where if they do draft a wide receiver and if they draft one in the second or third round, then I think the writing's kind of on the wall there, especially if it's a guy like a Philip Dorsett or one of these speedy guys that could potentially return kicks. I think that's kind of where Tate's job could be in jeopardy there a little bit. And who knows? I mean, maybe I've mentioned this a couple times on the podcast, but maybe the Bengals start to embrace a little bit of what the Seattle Seahawks have done a little bit and compete, and they bring some of these guys back and, maybe that's kind of the mantra they use throughout training camp. I don't know. I don't think he's 100% safe, meaning Brandon Tate, but they seem to like him, and I can't really put my finger on why.
I have no idea why they continue to use him and keep him around. I mean, this is all you need to know about Brandon Tate, guys. In that playoff game, who was our featured wide receiver when everybody was injured? Freaking Rex Burkhead. They couldn't even put Brandon Tate out there to contribute as a fifth-string receiver, probably a sixth-string receiver. So you mean to tell me that there's not somebody out there right now that you could have found in free agency that offers more and that can compete better than Brandon Tate can? I just cannot get my head around. And the more I try to get my head around the Bengals and this move, the more I just continue to get angry and feel like this team is going to be a first-round exit type team for years and years and years to come. And I wish that was not the case. I wish that they were pushing the boundaries and getting creative, and I'm just at a loss. Help me, Scott. Help me.
Nick, I don't think kick returner is a spot where you go into free agency to find, other than of course re-signing your own. I just don't see the value in it. I think that's a spot where you go in the draft. In this draft especially, there's a lot of guys in this draft, a lot of speedy receivers. Cody can probably hit on this more, but a lot of speedy receivers that have kick return experience. I talked about him before, a guy like Tyler Lockett from Kansas State. It's a speedy guy, a guy that, a lot of people have kind of linked to the Bengals, maybe third, fourth round area. Another guy's like Jamison Crowder from Duke, who's another guy. Philip Dorsett as well. I don't think the Bengals are going to be able to get their hands on him. I think he'll be gone too soon. But there's another guy. There's a lot of receivers in this draft that have speed and have kickoff return experience, and I think that's where they'll go. I think they will draft at least one, possibly two receivers in this draft, and I think one of those is going to be with the intent to take over the kick return role.
I don't know what team you've been watching, Scott, but I don't see it. I see Brandon Tate being the guy who takes the opening kickoff in September in week one. That's just they wouldn't have. if he was an insurance policy, I think they could have waited to sign Brandon Tate because there weren't a whole lot of teams barking up that tree. The Kansas City Chiefs, and clearly they weren't all that impressed and decided to pass on him, and he ended up back in Cincinnati. You mean to tell me if you needed an insurance policy, I could understand maybe making this signing after the draft or maybe possibly in training camp because he wasn't going anywhere, guys. So that's why I think he is your opening day kick returner, and he will be around. That's just that's my personal take. I hope I'm wrong though, but we've been saying it for 4 years now. There's no way Brandon Tate makes this roster. There's no way Brandon Tate makes this roster. Well, guess what? He does it every single year.
I'm going on record, Nick. He's not making the roster this year.
Oh, you heard it here first. Scott says no.
Book it.
Yeah, I actually agree with him. I think it's going to be a tough road to hoe there for.
But we've been saying that for years, guys.
I know that. And this, if there's one thing that the Bengals always show, especially to these certain players, Domata Pico, Brandon Tate, it's the loyalty factor. And I don't know exactly what it. I can get behind a Domata Pico much more than a Brandon Tate type of loyalty. And for whatever reason, this team just has that bred in its system. And a lot of times it's to very good players, and sometimes it's to players that are very questionable, and their contributions are very questionable. Brandon Tate is one. I do feel bad for him a little bit because I'm sure he catches the vibe that a lot of Bengals fans don't really like him on this team. So I feel bad for him as a person, but from a team standpoint, he does not improve this football team, and that signing does not improve this football team from my perspective.
Change. Preaching change around Cincinnati and around Paul Brown Stadium. Now, Brandon Tate wasn't the only signing this week. Pat Sims returned, as well as Brandon Gee. So now we've got basically the entire almost 2012 roster back here in Cincinnati. There's nothing There's nothing changing. I mean, in a sense that they're going back to what they did. Look, I don't want to harp on Brandon Tate any more than I already have, and I've bashed him plenty on this podcast. Clearly, I've gone on record saying I'm not a fan. Wasn't a fan today of the signing. I honestly thought that this was a April Fool's joke gone terribly awry, and I was quickly wrong. I guess I will just have to live with it. But yeah, Brandon Tate's back, wearing orange and black for the Bengals for the time being. I know AC wants to chime in and talk about Pat Sims because he's a huge fan. But Scott, talk about Brandon Gee coming back. I mean, he's another one of those draft picks from a couple years ago. I believe he was a third-round pick out of Wake Forest. Could never really seem to stay healthy, but was a guy that had some speed, and they liked him on special teams as well. But he's back, and he's a Bengal again.
Yeah, and I think this is another one of those signings where it's like, kind of insurance policy, don't have a lot to lose. They know what they get in the guy, which is probably an injured reserve position. But, they really like the guy coming out of the draft. He's got speed. He's got some experience, I suppose. But I think this is a team where you look at the cornerback position. Not so much this year, but next year they're going to be losing a lot of players. And I think this was a signing of let's see what he's still got. If he still has something, maybe he's the guy they keep next year, and they let Adam Jones and or Leon Hall walk because both of those guys are free agents next year. So I think this is just let's bring him in. Let's build a little depth on the team. He may make the team. He may not. Just like your boy Tate, he's a guy that doesn't have a spot solidified on this roster, but it's kind of what do we have to lose by bringing him in here?
Well, I think he has a better chance of making the team than – well, no, he doesn't have a better chance of making the team than Brandon Tate because Tate's a lock. I'm kidding. Definitely kidding. One guy, though, that will make the team this fall, we think, has a pretty good chance of making the team is Pat Sims, a guy who, when he was here, was disruptive. I think the Bengals really missed him when he left in free agency, but now he's back. AC, I know you're a big fan, and he's going to be, again, you sign Michael Johnson this offseason. You sign Pat Sims this offseason. You team him up with Brandon Thompson and Geno and Carlos Dunlap, and this defensive line has the makings of being dominant again.
You would hope so. I think I remember I asked you a few weeks back, Nick. What's the key to the Bengals defense? And I think I cut you off before you could respond. But it's rotation, and I think that's what the Bengals team, the Bengals defense, especially on the line, missed last year. You saw them struggle at times with the run. The Cleveland Browns game on Thursday Night Football really comes to mind. They got absolutely dominated then, and it just didn't really. That defensive unit kind of looked a little bit of a shell of itself for good chunks of the season. Now they kind of picked things up towards the end of the year. They really made a comeback against the Browns. I mean, they absolutely shellacked them, especially on defense that day. But I think bringing these guys in really can help you grow that rotation again. And Pat Sims, his specialty has been a penetrating guy that is going to stop the run, and if there is a pass, he's kind of a one-move, get-up-the-field guy and really kind of get in the quarterback's space. He's not a pass rusher, really, but he can kind of be disruptive. And I don't know. The Raiders kind of counted on him as an every-down starter. He had one good year with them, one down year with them. I just think he's a guy that you just continue to rotate in. I think you give him a good amount of snaps, and he'll be productive, but I don't think he's an every-down NFL defensive tackle. But Devin still has a lot to show. I know he's had some off-field stuff based on his own personal family issues and whatnot, but Devin Still's got a lot to show. D'Amato Pico's kind of on the downside of his career. I think they just wanted some bulk up front, and Pat Sims is a 315, 320-pound guy who excels against the run, and I think that's kind of what they're trying to do this offseason.
He's back. He's a guy that was really good against the run. An area in which the Bengals struggled a lot last year under first-year defensive coordinator Paul Gunther. You bring up some beef. You team him up with guys like Thompson and Still and Atkins, and I think this is a great signing for the Bengals moving forward. Pat Sims is back. I know you were pumped about that, Scott.
Yeah, I liked Sims when he was here, and I think Anthony kind of called it last week, or maybe it was 2 weeks ago on the podcast. Talking about Sims and his possible return, and I know a lot of Bengals fans think it's kind of the same old offseason, but this is the type of signing where I say it's not. The signings of guys like Pat Sims, like A.J. Hawk, while not flashy, build a lot of depth on this team. You're looking at a rotation now that probably will include Atkins, Thompson, Sims, either Pecco or Still. Let's not forget, if Still's able to focus on football more this year, this is a second-round pick who was the Big Ten Defensive Player of the Year, 3 years ago. So he was not some schmuck coming out of college. He was a well thought of defensive tackle. So he had a lot on his plate last year, but if he's able to focus on football more this year, they may still find something in Still. And I don't think the signing of Sims rules out a defensive tackle in the first round. If they bring him in, that's just one more player they got competing and making a very deep rotation at defensive tackle.
Yeah, I agree with you about Still. If he can get his head straightened out, we saw it in Hard Knocks a couple years ago with when he was talking to Zimmer about his mentality and whatnot. If he can get it going, I mean, this front seven, the defensive line has the makings of being probably the best D line in the AFC North. Would you not agree with that assessment, AC?
Potentially. I mean, now that Haloti Ngata is gone from Baltimore, the Pittsburgh Steelers are a little bit in flux. I think they've got, they've invested a couple picks over the last few years. I think it was Cameron Hayward and Stephon Tuitt that they brought in the fold there. So they could be building something there, but I think they lost the bearded one. His name escapes me at the moment, but he's been a stalwart there for a while. So they're a little bit in flux. Cleveland lost, the Jabal Sheard, the linebacker / defensive end up front, and I think Atiba Rubin, another defensive tackle, they lost him as well, I think, this offseason too. So if the Bengals can get it together, they can utilize that rotation. Yes, they can, and that was a very long-winded way of answering your question, Nick. I apologize.
Well, no, that's what we're here for, man. We want your in-depth analysis, AC, and you bring it each and every week. What about you, Scott? Do you think they had the best defensive line in the AFC North?
I have to take a look at what everyone's got left on the defensive line. I guess. I mean, I want to say yes, but last year is still fresh in my mind. I know they got a couple new players, but I'll believe it when I see it. Pat Sims is a couple years older than he was last time we saw him. Michael Johnson. We think we know what we're getting, but he did get cut from Tampa Bay after 1 year. So the question is does he pick up right where he left off here? So, until I see it on the field, I'm going to say no.
All right, fair enough. We'll talk about we'll wrap up our position group series tonight talking about when I say the quarterbacks, I mean our quarterback, Andy Dalton. And we'll give our letter grades because there's not a whole lot as far as analysis goes. As far as the specialists, Mike Nugent and Kevin Huber, we'll touch on that as well. Before we do that, though, let's hit up the jungle line. Area code 513. Hi, who's this?
Greg from Cincinnati. How you doing?
Greg, what's up, buddy?
Nothing much, man. Hey, which was more of a better April Fool's joke? Brandon Tate signing back or the Bengals mocking the Browns logo?
I'm so glad you brought that up, Greg. For those of you who didn't check it out today on the Bengals website, they said they had a brand new logo, and all they did was they basically they trolled the Browns in a sense that they changed the what do you want to call it, the tone of the orange. Which is basically what the Browns did with their logo a couple months back. They didn't really make any changes except it's a different shade of orange, and so that's what the Bengals did today. I thought that was excellent, Greg. That was more my favorite April Fool's joke rather than the signing of Brandon Tate.
Yeah, I was hoping. I looked at my phone and I'm like, you've got to be kidding me and stuff. I was kind of hoping they'd wait till after the draft and stuff, but that's just something I have to deal with. But you guys are talking about the defensive line. As good as the Bengals are loaded up, I'm still not convinced. I mean, our defensive line last year, let's face it, was terrible last year. Only like 20 sacks. Like J.J. Watt himself had more sacks than the Bengals. I'm not dissing J.J. Watt. He's the best defensive end in the league and stuff. But still, one player gets more sacks than your whole defense. Something's just not right. But my question to you is, do you think would it still surprise you if they went defensive tackle in the first round? Because this is loaded with defensive tackles. I mean, I want there to be full competition on that full defensive front.
Greg, I'm going to just say this. After what happened today, nothing will surprise me with the Bengals.
You're right.
And where they go. I will say this. I think for sure you're going to see them draft defense in the first round. I think you're going to see them draft probably defense in the first 2 rounds, to be honest with you.
Really?
I do. And, Marvin has hinted at, and maybe this is all smoke coming from Marv. Then again, he did tell us that there was going to be a change this offseason, and, well, we see where that went. But, he's been saying that they need to get better defensively. They've got guys with expiring contracts in the back end at safety and in the cornerback position. So I would not be surprised to see them go defense the first 2 rounds. As far as which position group, that remains to be seen. AC, you were shaking your head. You disagree with that? You don't think they'll go defense?
I think okay. So they have 4 picks within the first 3 rounds because that compensatory pick that came their way. I would venture to guess they at least split them between offense and defense, or maybe even go 3-1 offense to defense, because you looked at they signed A.J. Hawk as linebacker depth. They signed Michael Johnson defensive end depth and or starter. Pat Sim. I mean, majority of their free agency signings to this point have been defensive signings. So I still see a big void at tight end behind Tyler Eifert. I still see a big void for a speedy wide receiver and or slot guy, and those are the things you can address in the first 2 to 3 rounds and in those first 4 picks. Sure, you could do that later in the draft, but I think they probably go. There's also the talk of offensive tackle because of the future of Andre Smith and Andrew Whitworth too. So all of those could be in play in those first 3 rounds when they have those 4 picks, and that this year especially having that extra compensatory pick in that 3rd round I think is really clutch for this team, so they could really do some different things, build some depth, and plan for the future.
Greg, appreciate the call, man. Thanks for being such a super fan of the show.
I will do. Who day?
That's Greg from Cincinnati giving us a ring. We'll open up the phone lines a little bit later on in the program, but first let's talk about the quarterbacks, the position group series that we're going to wrap up tonight. Your thoughts overall, Scotty B, talking about the quarterbacks. Now we can really, when we say quarterbacks, we're really talking about Andy Dalton. Your what's the word I'm looking for here? Your thoughts on how he performed here in 2014.
Oh man, this should light up the phone lines. Getting some Andy Dalton talking here.
Right.
I think it was a tough year to grade Dalton. I had high expectations for him coming into the year, and he had his best year in some aspects. He had his best year in terms of completion percentage. I thought at the beginning of the year he was doing a very good job of protecting the football. What made it hard to grade Andy Dalton this year, and I know everyone's going to say these are excuses, but it's the truth. I mean, he was without his number 2 receiver all year long. He was without his top pass-catching tight end all year long. He was without A.J. Green for roughly a third of the season. So, you take away the top 3 receivers from anyone, be it Peyton Manning, Tom Brady, anyone, and their numbers are not going to look that great. He was, we look at you talked about the playoff game where his receivers were Mohamed Sanu, Greg Little, and Rex Burkhead. I mean, the fact of the matter is when you have that out on the field, you're not going to have great numbers. So, his numbers were down based on the offense he was running and the players he was missing. I think he had a decent season. I'll give him a C. I wouldn't give him any lower. I wouldn't give him any higher. But, I think with healthy players, he's back up in the 25 to 28 touchdown range next year, close to 4,000 yards. So I'm not as down on his season, I think, as most would be.
You factor in, AC, he lost a lot of weapons through the year. A new offensive coordinator that featured a run-heavy first offense rather than a pass-happy, sling-it-around type offense with Jay Gruden. I thought with all the injuries and with everything that surrounded him, I mean, let's be fair, the guy, there's just a ton of negativity surrounding this guy, and some of that's warranted and some of that's not. But I think he's had to deal with an absolute, just a lot on his plate, and maybe that's part of it, being an NFL quarterback. You have to deal with these type of things. But overall, 2014, I didn't think he did all that bad. I mean, I certainly would have expected a little bit more, but at the same time, I wasn't surprised either.
There was a lot of production that was left out there, and to your point, Nick, I mean, in his defense, there's a lot for him to deal with in 2014. New offensive coordinator, a little bit. I don't think it was a whole new system, but a tweaking of the system. A lot of injuries, and I give him credit for battling through that. But there are still those moments where he throws those inexplicable passes. And the Tampa Bay game kind of comes to mind. And I know he was ill in that game, and that was kind of the defense of that game. But the first 2.5 quarters to 3 quarters of that game was absolute. That was one of the worst professional quarterbacking performances I think I've seen through 2 to 3 quarters in that game. And I hate to point out just the negatives there, but he was making throws that you just do not make, especially I think 1 or 2 of them were in the red zone and or scoring area. So he took points off of the board for the Bengals. He didn't play that well in bad weather against the Denver Broncos. I mean, that was more defense and Jeremy Hill in that game. So, I mean, there are things that kind of still make me a little wary on giving my full support for him. I like him as a guy. He does flash at times on the field of being a really streaky and hot quarterback, but I don't know. I just I kind of expected more, especially how the season started. They were off to that 3-0 start. He was taking care of the football. He wasn't really doing anything too flashy, but he was really taking care of that football. I think they had 1 turnover total from offense in those first 3 games when they shot out to that 3-0 start, and then all of a sudden it kind of got out of control. And you would think when the Bengals' run offense really took off in that last half of the year and take pressure off of him with those injuries that started to accrue, you would think he kind of would play a little bit better. And, you didn't really see that. And unfortunately, there is the excuse, yes, he's missing a ton of weapons, but when you miss those weapons and you have Andy Dalton as your quarterback, that's when you sit here and you say, well, he's not the guy that really raises the talent around him. You got to surround him with a lot of talent. You have to make sure that his weapons are readily available to make sure that this team can go forward and be as successful as possible. He's not an Aaron Rodgers, he's not a Tom Brady, that sort of thing. So those are kind of some immediate thoughts that come to mind as I assess the position.
Yeah, I think AC, one thing you forgot to mention, though, how many other NFL teams had a QB catch a touchdown reception? I mean, when you talk about pure athleticism, I mean, look at the guy on that catch. That was beautiful.
I mean, cool play, yeah. I mean, it's a cool play. It was one of the best ones I've seen in a while. But I don't know.
I mean, your boy Sanchez couldn't have pulled that off. Come on.
No, he couldn't have done it. He couldn't have done it probably. But, I mean, I don't know how that really factors into quarterback prowess. But that was kind of in those first 3 games when that team was on that tear and they were getting really creative and they were making a lot of plays. Dalton was taking care of the ball, and granted, I love that play, Scott, and that's kind of funny you bring that up. But I mean, all in all, that's not really part of his quarterback play. I think he was okay, and I say okay because of the weapons he missed throughout the year, but I think that beyond that, it also showed kind of the warts that you have with Andy Dalton as your quarterback, because when you lose those weapons, he's not raising the talent level around him, and it showed in the playoff game and kind of some other games late in the season.
Would you say that the playoff game that Dalton played was the best of his 4?
Ooh. Well, I guess technically he didn't turn the ball over, did he?
No, not that I can remember. AC.
So I guess from that standpoint, I'd have to say yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there are a couple of offensive references and or sayings I could make to this, but I'm not gonna say it. But I mean, it's kind of saying it's the least horrible of horrible performances. I mean, it's just kind of like, I mean, he did okay, and I give him a little bit of a pass because of all those weapons that they missed. But I mean, I wouldn't say it was good. Would you, Nick?
No, I don't think it was good. I just think it was, out of the 4 he has played, it was his best one. I mean, the previous 3 were horrendous. So I mean, I guess if you look on the bright side, the 4th time is the charm.
And let's not forget. I mean, I hate to keep banging this dead horse, but who was he throwing to this time? I mean, Sanu, Greg Little, Rex Burkhead, and Kevin Brock was his tight end. I mean, he had nothing. Absolutely, he may as well have had the 3 of us out there running routes for him. That was about what he had on the field.
But we would agree that was his best playoff performance.
It was not. And it really wasn't because of Dalton. Right. It really was not. Exactly. That's kind of what I was getting at, Nick. It really isn't saying much, but at the same time, I mean, it wasn't on Dalton this time that the team lost the game. It was injuries. The defense didn't play well. They looked pretty gassed as a team and ill-prepared overall. I think that combination of factors kind of did it this time. Other times, Andy Dalton was a major factor in the team losing the game.
Yeah, the game that really sticks out to me is the Cleveland Browns game on Thursday night, where the wind played havoc on his ball, whatever. It didn't appear to affect Brian Hoyer all that much. It's very hit or miss with Dalton. You know right away when he has it. You also know right away when he doesn't. And so, yeah, I guess that's where we're at with our quarterback. Scott already kind of gave his grade. He said C. So if you had to give a letter grade for Andy Dalton this year, Anthony, how about you?
I'm just going to give him a straight D.
All right. I can't argue that. I'm going to go D as well. I expected a lot more from them this year. The touchdown to turnover ratio wasn't very great. It was almost 1-to-1, which is not good if you're a quarterback in this league. I know he had a lot of injuries to deal with as far as his receiving threats go, and I know it was a new scheme with Hugh Jackson. but at the same time, you need to do better, and hopefully he does better here in 2015. Hopefully he has guys he can actually throw it to that can move the chains and stretch the field, where he certainly did not have that here in 2014. Quickly, let's talk a little bit about the specialists. I don't want to leave them out, clearly, because I'm an ex-kicker. I love me kicking the football. That's my favorite part of the game. I hope they do get rid of the extra point, by the way, but that's for another day. Your thoughts on Nugent this year, Scott? I know he missed a huge kick against the Panthers, but after that he really stepped it up, and he was solid the rest of the way. He had a rough go, I believe it was in Baltimore at the beginning of the year, but I mean, he's Mike Nugent. He's pretty solid. He's back again. But your thoughts on how he performed here in 2014?
Yeah, well, before we move on to Nugent, Nick, I'd like to bring up, are we being too hard on Dalton because of his red hair? I mean, look at us as Bengals fans. We're banging on Dalton. We ran, Shane Graham out of town. I mean, what do we have against these guys with the red hair?
I've got nothing against redheads. My son is redheaded, so I am not.
That's true.
I have nothing against the hair.
Like him for other reasons.
Right. Well, no, I don't. I'm again, and I've said this before many times on this show. I'm not pro Dalton. I'm not anti Dalton. I'm pro winning. That's what I want. And so, if I'm on the fence, then that's the way it is. I mean, the Bengals aren't making a change at quarterback anytime soon, so I'm not gonna let that boil my blood like signing Brandon Tate would, because I've only got so much blood to boil.
Yeah, and I said in the chat room, from my perspective, I like the guy. I want him to do well. He seems like a good character guy. He does a lot of community work. He seems like a really likable guy. He's won a lot of games for the Bengals, so you want to root for him. You want him to do well. I'm just not going to make a lot of excuses for him anymore. We're now in the 5th year of the Andy Dalton era. I think we've seen what we've got. I think we've seen what we don't have, and I can't make the excuses to really back him up until he shows otherwise from this point on.
Yeah, I think that's well said, AC. Now let's go back to Nugent, Scotty.
back to Nugent. He kind of had a tale of two seasons. He got off to a rough start. He of course had the kick that everyone remembers, which was the miss in overtime against Carolina. But you take a look after that. I mean, the guy was 16 for 17, including a 57-yarder in the playoffs. His only miss was from 53 in Pittsburgh, which is a place where 53-yarders. There's only been a handful ever made in that stadium. It's a very tough place to make 50-some-yard field goals. So he had the bad kick against Carolina, and he had that one bad game against Atlanta. You take that out, and other than that, he actually had a solid season. He had, 2 bad games and 15 pretty solid games. So, I thought he had a good year. Nothing great. I thought bringing him back was probably the right move. It doesn't excite me a lot, but I also don't, see it as a negative bringing him back.
Would you agree with that, AC?
Yes and no. Kickers are kind of a weird animal there for teams. I mean, it seems like the veteran guys kind of get cycled through teams and continuously get jobs, and I think that's more of the reliability factor. You know what you get with some of those veteran guys, so that's why a guy like Nugent is good. He doesn't have the strongest leg, and when you get in that 45-plus range, and especially if it's outdoors, you get a little sketchy. But like you both said, he really picked it up that second half of the year after that critical miss. I think he was probably going through some stuff personally. I think he lost his father at that time, and he was kind of going through some things mentally, I'm sure, emotionally. Unfortunately, sometimes with any job, you got to put that stuff aside, and unfortunately with football, fans don't really take that into account. I mean, as sad as that is, they just kind of say, are you doing your job? And kickers' jobs, as you know, Nick, they're under the microscope. I mean, they get 1 or 2 duties per game, and that's kind of the deal. So I'm not opposed to him coming back. I'd like a little more competition, but I think they know what they have there. You're going to get about an 75 to 80% kicker, closer probably to 80%, which is pretty decent. He's made a couple of clutch kicks in his time, and he ended up really picking it up last year. So I'm not opposed to Nugent coming back, but I'm not really ecstatic either. It's just kind of like, okay, there's the kicker.
Yeah, I mean, it's not for somebody like me who's how should I say this? A kicker nerd. I'm proud of it. These are the kind of signings that I get excited about. He's not going to go out there and who am I looking for a name here? He's no Sebastian Janikowski, but he's a solid NFL kicker, and he's made a pretty good career of it. And he's staying in state, which is good. He's a local product, so good for him. I'm glad he's back. I thought he had a pretty solid year. After that big miss, that was a big miss at the time when he missed that kick against Carolina. He focused and got right, and he made it a hell of an end of the season. So good. I'm pumped for Nugent. I'm glad he's back. I'm also pumped because Kevin Huber had an outstanding 2014, Anthony. The best punter in the AFC in most accounts, and one of the best punters in the NFL last year. A guy coming off a broken neck, a broken jaw, and came back. I mean, let's be fair. We're talking about a punter who very rarely gets hit, but that was pretty brutal the way his season ended in 2013. But he had a solid year in 2014, probably one of the best punting years in franchise history.
Yeah, and he's I think the team has him locked up pretty long term, so that's good. He's had a couple of good years, and the team drafted him a few years back, and you sit here and you go, you're really using a draft pick on a punter, but he was viewed as the best punter in that draft class, and the best punter in the nation as a college player that year, and local kid, and the team obviously knew what they had in him, so they drafted him. I think it was in the 5th round. Yep. And then they have kept him since, and he's been a quality player and a pretty good weapon for them when that offense stalls out. There's been a couple of big boomers I can remember that he's kicked out when the team doesn't have the greatest field position sway there, and he's really helped out both the offense and the defense with his legs. So he's as far as punters go, he's one of their best players on the team, and I hope he's a career Bengal because he was very deserving of the Pro Bowl last year, and I think he's got more good years to come.
The Bengals had one of their best stretches in not allowing a special teams return on punts last year until they played the Steelers, and Antonio Brown ended that run. But they had a great year on special teams. A lot of that had to do with the directional punting of Kevin Huber, and he was a Pro Bowler because of it. He had a fantastic year here in Cincinnati. I think all three of us would give him an A. Are you shaking your heads yes for that? Okay, good. All right, good, solid. That might be one of the only A's we handed out this year, unanimous A for a position player this year. So that just goes to show you where he was here in 2014. So that wraps up our position group series. Next week we'll talk about the coaching, and we'll dissect that a little further. In particular, we'll talk about Marvin Lewis and where he stands. I'm laughing because Anthony just sent me a message that said no Clark Harris. Yeah, Clark Harris was solid. No snaps over anybody's head, no bad snaps. So Clark Harris, I guess you can get an A as well. And he snapped the ball into Joe Reedy's face a couple years ago, so that's even better. Good job, Clark Harris. All right, we'll open up the phone lines if you want to get in touch. 404-946-3397 is the number to call. Or if you want, you can get in touch with us on our Skype line. Inside the Jungle is the Skype account. We've got a couple more minutes here. So if you want to get in touch, again, that number 404-946-3397 is the number to call. Bengals on Thursday will be hosting a visit with I want to make sure I get this name right because I saw a bunch of different names thrown around in the chat room. Rob Hausler, the tight end from Arizona, AC. With all the question marks we've got with Gresh and really Tyler Eifert, unless there's somebody I'm missing off the top of my head, the only one signed as a tight end right now. Hausler was a pretty good weapon for the Cardinals last year. He's not necessarily the greatest blocker in the world, but he's a guy that can get down the field down the seam.
He's an interesting guy because he's a receiving tight end, but he doesn't catch a lot of touchdowns. He has a lot of catches, okay amount of yards, but he doesn't have a lot of touchdowns. He's not a blocker. He's kind of more of a Tyler Eifert mold, which is fine. I think the Bengals could probably invest in more of a blocker guy in the draft if they do pick up Hausler. But Hausler is getting some interest from the Ravens as well. So I mean, obviously he's got some value there, and the Cardinals have a few big wide receivers, and they look at Fitzgerald, they look at Michael Floyd, that's kind of where they go. They also have had some quarterback issues, injuries, that sort of thing over the past couple of years, so that's maybe why his touchdown numbers have been so low. But, if in Hugh Jackson's system, where he utilizes tight ends a bit more than other systems around the league, the Cardinals being one, Bob Bratkowski, a couple of predecessors of his ago, I think Hauser could be a decent pickup, at least some depth, and then the Bengals could look at more of a blocker, inline guy. There's also something that I don't think we've talked about either is, Ryan Hewitt could also potentially, I don't think they will do it, but he could potentially be brought up to tight end as more of a blocker guy, and then they bring in more of a true thumper fullback, and that's how they round out that group. I'm kind of interested to see how that plays out.
We've talked about that before. We love Ryan Hewitt, and I wouldn't be surprised if they do move him to tight end and let him play that position more regularly. I would love to see that, MD. Let's go to the jungle line and welcome back an old friend of the program. We haven't heard from him in quite some time. The one and only Fatal Content. Fatal, how you been, buddy?
I've been good, man. Been good, man. Missed you guys, man. How's everything been?
It's a Wednesday night. We're talking Bengals. Does it get any better?
No, it doesn't, man. I'm hyped, man. I miss football already, man. And you guys, I guess, give us the nice the outlet to talk about them when it's not football season for a while.
Yeah, we do. We talk every week, man. Let's hear your thoughts. Brandon Tate signed today. Are you happy? But I bet you're happy with this signing, aren't you?
I'm actually just I'm glad about it, man. It doesn't make me mad. It doesn't make me happy.
No, it makes me mad, very mad. But that's another. I don't want my blood pressure went down during the show after not talking about Brandon Tate. So I'm going to switch subjects. What's on your mind? What do you want to talk about?
I want to talk about the fact that we need to. I'm trying to keep talking it into existence, man. But it needs to happen, man. We need to draft Philip Dorsett ASAP as soon as it can happen. My dream would be, that we don't really get a lot of Canes in here. So my dreams would be that in one draft we knock down two of them in the first two picks, man. Eric Flowers and then my boy Dorsett.
All right. Could they go wrong there, AC? I mean, that's not. I don't know.
No, they can't. They just don't normally pick guys from the same school in the same draft, especially. I mean, Dorsett's probably going to be, a second-round guy, and Flowers is probably going to be somewhere in that first round. So they don't normally do that. I would expect them probably, like I said, I think it's going to be 2-2 in those first three rounds with those first four picks. I think they're probably going to go two offensive players and two defensive players. I don't know exactly who that be. I think who that would be. I think Dorsett is on that. On that radar there. I think there's a couple of Scott mentioned them earlier, and I'm interested to see what he has to say about this too. But there's a couple of names that Scott brought up, but there's one he omitted, and that's USC's Nelson Aguilar, a guy that could be a second-round talent and can play inside, outside, and has some kick return ability. But I think Dorsett's in play. I think Lockett's in play, and I think Aguilar is probably in play. They want some more receiving talent. Not that they don't have talent already, but guys are injured a lot, some inconsistency aside from A.J. Green, and I think they want to add to that.
Everybody here is picking their homer team. So, Scott, you got anybody from UC you want the Bengals to pick? I'm just kidding. I'm totally teasing.
Ooh, probably not, Nick.
Okay.
At least not on day 1 or 2.
But I mean, as far as the guys Fatal brought up, I mean.
Yeah, as far as the guys Fatal brought up, I mean, yeah, they normally don't go same school, but why not? I actually like both of the guys that Fatal brought up. I don't think I don't know if Philip Dorsett's going to last long enough to get to them in the second round. I don't see him taking him in the first round. I believe he just ran a 4.25 today in his pro day. He's a small guy, but I think he'll probably be gone before they take him in the second round. If they don't take him in the second round, I don't see him being around in round 3. There have been some mocks that have Eric Flowers going to the Bengals. I wouldn't rule it out. I think with the signing of Pat Sims, there's a pretty good chance they go offensive line in round 1. The question will be who's there. I've seen Andrus Peat from Stanford be a popular pick. Eric Flowers is another one. Leo Collins is another one. I know that's a guy Cody likes. So I think offensive line and Flowers particularly is in play there. But like I said, if they don't go for Dorsett in round 2, I think round 3 or 4 is where they do pick a receiver. The guy that AC mentioned from USC, I don't know how to pronounce his name, Nelson Aguilar or however you say it, but a guy like Tyler Lockett maybe closer to the 4th round. But both of those guys are guys that could definitely add something to this receiver core, more than they had last year for sure.
We'll see what happens. To be fair, the Bengals have shown in years past where they draft guys in the same round. They did it. It seems like every year for like 3 years in a row they drafted 2 Georgia guys. So I mean, it's not totally out of the question, but if those guys fall to them where they're drafting, then we'll see what happens. But we'll see. I know you want to see some Hurricanes on this roster, Fatal, but maybe you need to call in more and let us know how you feel about that. All right.
Yeah, man, I'll definitely do that. I just think it's a possibility because I think Flowers, if he's still there, we take him. And also I think it's the same thing with Dorsett. It's the kind of thing, if they're still there, it can happen, but I doubt it. Like you guys said, 2 in a row would be kind of crazy. But they provide us something at a much-needed position. And I know this is a football podcast, but, man, I just got to say, I just hope on the injury front my teams can stay healthy, man, because the Miami Heat this year, man, have been the Cincinnati Bengals of the NBA world, man. They just can't stay healthy. No one can stay on the court, and it's kind of how I felt last year with the Bengals, man. So I hope in some capacity, the Bengals can stay healthy next year. That's all I want, man.
Dude, the Miami Heat will come nowhere close to being the Bengals because the Heat actually have rings, all right? So I don't want to hear it, Fatal.
Yeah, we're spoiled out here, though, man. All we do is win, man. So we spoiled, man. When we go through these seasons, it feels surreal.
Hey, don't be a stranger, buddy. All right, we'll talk to you soon.
Hey, man, I miss you guys, man. AC, I see you with the beats on, man. I see Scotty over there looking like he's about to rap with his mic position.
Nice.
Yeah, man, you guys take it easy, man. Beat me up.
What's up? See you, Fatal. Appreciate the call. Oh, love hearing from Fatal. It's been a while. Glad to hear his voice. Glad to hear he's doing all right. Let's get out of here. Let's do some shout-outs, shall we? Start us off, Scotty B. Beam me up.
I'm going to give a shout-out to a guy dropped me a couple emails this week regarding a article I wrote on the positional outlook for the quarterbacks. I don't know if he listens to the show or not. If it doesn't, he should. But Drew Elmore had a couple good thoughts. Dropped me a couple good emails. So a shout out to Drew if he's listening. If not, Drew, you need to start listening as well as reading.
Good shout. How about you, Anthony?
I get a little stingy with these, Nick. I like to shout out a few, so bear with me one sec. A couple of listeners and followers on Twitter. Antoine Malone, who I believe is in the chat room. Isaiah Michael Cox, who sent us a lot of tweets over the past couple of days. I'm also going to shout out Terrell Watson, who is a small school running back at Azusa Pacific University here in Southern California. That school is actually a bitter rival of the alma mater of mine, Concordia University, and he's going to visit the Bengals in a couple of weeks. I just tweeted that out and wrote an article on that. And because of that, one more shout out, Kyle Caskey, the running back coach of the Bengals, started following me on Twitter after I put out that post on Terrell Watson. So those are my shout outs.
Awesome. Good shout out. I'm going to give a couple shout-outs this week. First and foremost, this is from, if I'm butchering your name, I really do apologize, Jonah Stafford. Joanna? I really am sorry. It says, can I get a shout-out to Clifford Holbrook, Bengals fan for life. He is going to love this. So yeah, there's your shout out, Clifford, and thanks to Joanna. I apologize for butchering that, for sending that in. And also, this came from our good pal Fado. It says, for episode 190, could you shout out my fiance Sana? We are getting married next Saturday. That would be this coming Saturday. She's a big Bengals fan. So there's your shout out, Sana, and congrats on the marriage, the wedding, and best of luck to the new couple there, Fado and Sana. Wow, I need to learn how to talk. Clearly, this Brandon Tate stuff has really bothered me this week, and so yeah, those are shout outs. If you want to be shouted out on the program, all you have to do is reach out and get in touch. You can send me your tweets at Nick Suberling. You can always email me, insidethejungle@spnt.tv. We missed Mickey this week. He was playing an April Fool's joke on us and couldn't be here tonight, but hopefully we'll catch back up with him next Wednesday night. Final thoughts, Anthony, as we wrap up episode 190.
I'm going to give Scott a little bit of props. He put up a post on Cincy Jungle about the quarterback. I think it was the positional outlook on quarterbacks. Sparked a lot of debate, and a lot of people commented on the post. Very well written. Didn't agree with everything that he wrote because he's a little bit more of a Dalton supporter than I am, but very, very well thought out piece, and I commend him for writing that.
Thank you, AC. I'm sure Scott appreciates that as well. And thanks for all you do for us here on the podcast, Anthony, and at the website. You do a fantastic job as always. You can follow Anthony at CJAnthonyCUI on Twitter. He loves the Twitter, so make sure you check him out there. Good stuff as always. Yep. Scott, how about you? Final thoughts.
Thanks, AC. It wouldn't be very entertaining if we did agree on everything. So it's good that we can go back and forth, especially on a top tier quarterback like Andy Dalton. So, final thoughts is just with a month away from the draft, I think it's a lot of fun watching these mock drafts pop up. I think some of these people are just putting people in slots just to get some eyeballs to take a look. But it's always fun to debate, so I enjoy it and look forward to 1 month from actually I guess a little bit less than a month from now we'll be doing the live show down at Lachey's. So looking forward to that. If you're listening, make sure you're down there.
Absolutely, Lachey's, they retweeted me over the weekend with the graphic promoting our upcoming live show there down at Lachey's. It should be a lot of fun. April 30th, the podcast meetup will start at 6. There at the bar, and then we'll start the show, the live broadcast, which you can watch here at cincyjungle.com on April 30th. That's a Thursday. That will kick off at 8 p.m. Eastern, and we'll go all the way through the entire first round of the draft. It should be a lot of fun. It was a 4-hour broadcast last year, and so this year it should be even more fun now that we'll all be there in person. It's one thing to do it over the web using web cameras, and some of the timing is a little off because of the delays and whatnot, but now that we're going to be there face-to-face in person, we'll be able to use visual cues a lot better. I'm really, really looking forward to that broadcast and having everybody in the same room for the first time. April 30th, so put it in your calendars. Come visit us at Lachey's down and over the Rhine. Have a beer, have a beverage, have some food, hang out with us, and we'll talk Bengals, and we'll have a lot of fun. Again, April 30th is the date for that. My final thoughts as we wrap up. I hope everybody had a great April Fool's Day. I hope everybody had fun on social media today with all the news that came down regarding the Bengals. It was an interesting day. If you want to leave feedback about the show and talk me off the ledge, the Brandon Tate ledge, you can always email me insidethejungle@spnt.tv. And as always, Inside the Jungle is a listener-supported show. If you'd like to contribute and help us out, we've got a lot of expenses coming up with this live show. You can help out at spnt.tv/Patreon, Patreon. That is the web address. We certainly appreciate all the support that has been given to us over the last few months. It really does help and go a long way in making our show very, very successful. Got to thank my associate producers, Andy Lanham, Larry Rolson, Mike Vardy, and Fado Bayardi as well for all that they do for Inside the Jungle. That's going to do it. Episode 190 is in the can. Inside the Jungle is an SPNT production. For more information about our other podcasts, log on to spnt.tv. And as always, Check out the amazing work of Mickey Metzer, Scott Bantel, Anthony Cosenza, Brendan Warner, Josh Kirkendall, Jason Markham, Rebecca Toba. The list goes on and on. They do a fantastic job at cincyjungle.com. So then we'll see you next Wednesday night. Hoo-day, everybody! Good show.
Yeah, it was good for off-season show. I liked it. I gotta check on something real quick. I'll be right back.
All right.
Nick, how did the mic sound better, or can you not tell until you go to
Dude, it was
things?
great. It sounds better.
Did okay.
It's all about that bass.
I got a piece of yeah, I got a piece of plywood here that I got it hooked up to. I mean, it's real professional.
I've got
setup here.
shims on my desk back here. You can't see it, but because I didn't want to damage the desk. So I've got some wood shims in between to protect it.
Yeah.
I'm glad you got it and it worked out.
Yeah, man. Thanks for that.
No problem. Yeah, I was gonna
I'll
go
have
the
to talk
headset. Yeah. So when you go meet down at Lachey's, can you find out if they have speakers?
Yes. I mean, I would assume they do.
That's what I thought too. Freaking.
I should have CC'd you on the email that I sent the guy. He said they do have Ethernet port that we can hook into.
Perfect.
I'm trying to get a hold of Mickey. I haven't heard back from the guy. Had said weekdays, but sometime between 4 and 6. So ideally, I'd like to get down there next Wednesday or Thursday. You
guys can go down April, because we won't have a show April 15th, because I'll be in Vegas.
Okay. 15. Okay. Yeah, I'll see about that. I mean, I thought about maybe going down next week just because anything we find out or learn, we could kind of shoot the shit about before the show. See if there's anything else.
Yeah, that's a good point too.
Right.
Yeah.
But if that doesn't work out, then we'll do the 15th. But yeah, and I'd spent so much damn time making those T-shirts on Custom Ink, and then I took a look at the price, and I was like, "Good God,
I'll never use them again."
Jesus, man, the T-shirts that I was making, they were like $41 a shirt.
Yeah. Yeah,
I mean,
it's not cheap.
Holy cannoli!
So I just give you an idea of why I'll never use them again. I put my order in January, and I'm still battling with them about the orange shirts because they don't know how to print them. It's like, you got to be kidding me. It's so frustrating. So, yeah.
Well, the one thing I kept finding, I don't know if you had this issue, but when I was the images I was uploading from were from, I had, done them on Photoshop, which I'm assuming that's where you did the logo.
Yeah, I mean, Sarah used Adobe Illustrator, but I mean, Photoshop, you can open an Illustrator file, and I mean, it's the same thing.
Yeah. So, I mean, I kept uploading them, but it would in that one I sent you guys, it didn't have the outline on the Cincy Jungle logo, but it did in the file. Like, that's the thing. It's like it would upload, it would seemingly bring in color or leave out color just on a whim, and so Mickey said he's got a place up in Loveland. Maybe that would work.
Oh, cool. Yeah, I mean, if we could, yeah.
So I'll touch base with him.
I've got some left over that people haven't bought, so I'm going to be bringing those down to give away.
Gotcha. Do we have some girls to shoot them out of the T-shirt cannons?
That would be nice, but we don't have that.
Are your kids going to do it?
They will be there.
Yes, sir. Give them a T-shirt cannon.
I'm going to have I don't know who I'm going to have do it, but we're not going to be using Hangout, but we're going to have multiple cameras. So I'm going to have somebody like switching the camera.
Okay.
Because, I mean, I could do it, but it's going to be stressful, like trying to keep everything, like switching the camera. Oh, getting so-and-so on the line to talk about their draft pick.
Yeah.
Means it's hard enough here, let alone we're going to be in person and doing it's going to be It's gonna be fun. I'm really looking forward to it. But
So I have commitments from everyone, but that I emailed, but the Browns. I know you were reaching out to someone.
Yep.
Did they commit? Have you been able to get them?
I will send an email out this week.
What about your Eagles person? I saw you emailed.
Yeah, he responded with sure, and that was it. So I'm like, you really want to do it? So I don't know. Maybe I just won't bother him.
So I mean, we got like I think 8 maybe.
Yeah, I think it'll be.
I sent it out to 7 or 8, and then you send it to the Eagles.
What teams don't you have people for?
Well, we've got 8 down. I don't want to have all 32 because it'll take forever.
Right.
But I want.
Are there any teams that you? Is there any teams that you guys specifically want to see if there's somebody?
Well, we got someone from each of the AFC North teams, obviously, and then we got some teams at the top of the draft. So we got the Bucks and we got the Titans. We got a guy from the Cardinals. Nick's got a guy from the Eagles. And am I missing anyone else, Nick?
Not that I know of.
I mean, I got a list here somewhere. I guess I could pull it up.
Okay.
Instead of shooting off the hip, but
I got a guy for the Chargers, and
He froze. I have no idea what he said.
Chargers and
Jets.
Oh, Jets. Okay. Well,
Since the possible Mariota pick of Jets, that's why I didn't know if they were intrigued.
well, the only reason I did, I don't know, Nick. I don't know how many people you want, but I was originally gonna ask the Jets, but when I traded questions with them this year, the guy was kind of a dick, so that's why I didn't reach out. The guy that I traded questions with.
Yeah, so the guy I have, he doesn't work for SB Nation or anything. He just does Jet stuff. So it's up to you guys. I got a couple goobs that I talk to on a pretty regular basis for a lot of these teams.
Cody, I got my AFL watch pass.
Oh, nice. Yeah, they're getting ready to start up.
Yep.
Have you seen that? Did you see that blooper video from them from last year where they're like interviewing a player and then one of the AFL players is like tossing his kid around in the background and just drops him on his head and just picks him up and walks off?
Nice. No, I didn't see that.
I'm like, only in the AFL he's tossing his child around. Like, whatever.
Fed, how you been,
by the way, I got Vikings and Chiefs too.
Oh, cool. Yeah.
Okay.
I've been good, man. I've been a little busy, man, working a crazy schedule, so I haven't been able to tune in, man. Sorry about that.
Don't need to apologize. You're here now.
Yeah, no doubt. But, I always wanted to be a regular fixture, man. I kind of went away from it. I didn't want you guys to think, oh, football season's always gone. Nah, I was a little busy.
We'll talk about guys we haven't heard from in a while. Where's John from Kentucky? We haven't heard from him in since January.
I'm just surprised that we didn't hear from him today.
Yeah, who knows what's going on with John?
Bengals can't lose in the offseason, so you won't hear from John.
I thought the Tate signing would bring him out of the woodworks, though.
I could not believe what happened. I could not. See,
that was just the Bengals sticking a knife in Nick's back and turning it.
Dude,
I mean, that's what
on April Fool's days, of all days to do it.
I was sleeping and my phone went berserk. And I looked and I was like, you gotta be kidding me! What?
I think he has blackmail pictures on somebody in the organization.
I don't
know how he keeps getting re-signed. I mean, he's a solid. I guess he's solid.
Solid? There's nothing solid about Brandon Tate. Come on, Fatal.
I was just gonna finish. I guess he's solid if you don't like a guy that doesn't fumble a lot and doesn't do much anything spectacular. He's solid in that aspect, but he's nothing out of the regular. I don't understand how he keeps getting a job.
Change.
I mean, I'm not mad, but I mean, I'm also that move is kind of like, I don't feel anything about it. I just don't understand it.
I don't know how they let Jacoby Jones leave the building.
Oh.
It's too expensive. Why would you sign a 30-year-old guy that's going to be expensive?
I think he probably
oh, come on.
You can get someone just as good as Jacoby Jones in the draft.
Yeah, Jacoby Jones he's another Brandon Tate. I mean, he had
Sign Brandon Tate after the draft.
Or never.
or never.
Okay, yeah, even better.
I'm starting to like Brandon Tate now. I'm starting to come around. I'm starting to think he might be the best Bengal ever.
He's winning in the Super Bowl, then he'll make.
Hey, I heard
Right.
he's been doing some off-season work, and the light really came on for him.
Oh my God! I'd rather have Stanford Jennings now than Brandon Tate now.
Right.
I don't know if you guys saw his video footage on the beach catching passes like Marvin Jones, but man, he looked great.
Oh God!
Shut up. No. Worst April Fool's Day ever.
Poised for a breakout year, Nick.
By the way, let me see if I can grab it.
Hey, Nick,
Cody, what would Tate score?
It
on the
was
Spark score.
like 30.
Would he even register?
He would be low in the spark score.
so today is
Actually,
the
he'd
1
be
year,
decent because he's kind of athletic.
today is the 1 year anniversary of the cease and desist from the National Football League.
What was that? What was that for?
The use of the word "Houday Weekly."
Nick,
Wow.
you should have had a cake and some candles to blow out tonight.
Should have. Actually, I came across last week, might have been 2 weeks ago, I found my very first ever podcast. And I thought I had lost it, but I found the audio from it, and it's horrible. It was bad.
Oh, man.
But I found out that and I couldn't remember what date I actually published the episode, but the date of the very first published podcast I ever made was May 20th, 2005. So I'm coming up on the 10-year anniversary. So
You should You should replay it the week you're out in Vegas. Since we're not having a show, you should replay it.
I should. I have the audio if you guys want to hear it.
That would be awesome.
That's coming up
That would be
next
awesome.
weekend.
Yeah, the week of the 13th through the 16th, there won't be a show because I'll be in Vegas.
Hey guys, I got to
Week
bounce,
off.
so I'll catch up with you guys next week.
Yeah, I got to bounce too. Got to go to work. You guys are all more than
All right.
welcome to stay on the line. AC,
Oh,
Cody,
I'm
Fatal.
gonna hang for a couple, then I gotta go.
All right.
Sounds
Everybody-
good. See you guys next week.
See you, Scott.
Smell ya.
Hey.
Bye, Fatal.
All right, man. Take it easy, Nick.
Bye.
You
Cody.
know you're what?
What's up, Cody, man? What's up with Perriman, man? You still not high on Perriman?
I like him, just not where people rated him. I don't want him in the first. I'll take him in the second.
No, definitely no, not in the first. Anyone who
That's
gets-
what I was saying. When I was talking to you about him, everyone was hyping him like late first, and I was like, no thanks. I'll take him in the second. I'd prefer to wait for him in the third, but he has some good things. He does some good things. He's a little small, but this class is like, to me, there's like four guys, and then it's like a huge drop off. And then so you're gonna see like Kendricks, you're gonna see McKinney, Stephon Anthony, and Perryman all go in the first two rounds, and teams are going to pick their preference. Like some guys are going to like McKinney just because he's so he's just a monster. A 3-4 team can stick him as a Ted linebacker and no problem. And then the exact opposite for Perryman, teams might see him as a perfect Mike or Will because of his speed. But those four guys are going to come off in the first two rounds, and then you're not going to see anybody until probably like 30 picks later. Like mid to late third round, you won't see anybody come off.
Yeah, it'd be ironic if he went to the Ravens, man. I can see him going to the Ravens, probably wearing that 52 again.
Yeah, 52, or if they get, I mean, the thing with the Ravens, you have to watch. I could see them picking like at the top of the third because they've got like 6 picks in the top 4 rounds. They've got 2 or 3 thirds and 2 fours that they can trade. They've got a comp pick, and I think they traded and got an extra pick last year maybe or something. So they got a lot of picks, and Ozzy will jump around if there's somebody they want. So if you see a trade in the early part of the 3rd round and Perryman's still there, I wouldn't be surprised if they go up to get some guys they want. Wouldn't be surprised if we got lucky and they traded it. They could trade in the 1st too. They might even trade with us. They don't really care who they give picks to. If there's somebody they want. They want to get ahead of Pittsburgh if they want a corner. They got a lot of picks to give up. They can move up. They might move up to like that. If somebody they like falls into the late teens.
Do you think there's any chance Gregory falls because of the marijuana thing? I mean, I don't even know how guys still test positive for marijuana this week.
He'll fall.
Do you think he falls?
He'll fall.
Yeah, he'll fall. I still don't see him get into us, and he's not a real good fit for us because he's like a string bean. He's so skinny. And everyone talks about him putting on weight. I mean, he's 15 pounds from being 15 pounds where he needs to be. You know, he's 30 pounds under what you want, and he's got to be at like 260 to start the season if he wants to finish the season at 250. All these guys lose weight. So I don't know if he's a great fit for us, but yeah, he'll fall, but I don't think he'll fall that much. But for us, a lot of times, because I do the stuff with Joe and this other guy, Ryan, we do all spreadsheet together and just kind of try to get as many people as we can on there. And for us, you fail a combine drug test, it's like a 2-round knock for us. We already had Gregory as like 50th overall anyways, though. We didn't love him.
Wow.
He's just so skinny. I mean, if you watch his tape, I mean, everyone just goo-goos over his athletic scores, but yeah, I can pull it up. Give me a second. I'll tell you where we had him. We just, we weren't super high on him, though. And that's just, there's a couple guys that were like that. One of them was Gregory. The other one's Bud Dupree. And a lot of the stuff we saw on tape definitely showed up in the rankings too, because like Bud Dupree, our biggest complaint on him is like change of direction, because he like goes straight line speed. He beats the guys with his speed, and then he can't get to the quarterback. He just runs right by the quarterback. So then he came out and he ran his 3-cone, and it wasn't that good, which is change of direction. 20-yard shuttle, 3-cone. Let me see. It's loading here. Let's see. We had
No, I was asking, is AC still there? He's quiet.
No, I'm here. There was a lot of choppiness to what it was coming through here, so I was kind of letting it go through. So.
Yeah, Gregory's currently our lowest rated edge guy. He's our 9th guy.
Wow.
He scored just under like Marcus Golden, Nate Orchard. We really dinged him for like his power rush, pass coverage is terrible, which if he's going to be a 3-4 outside linebacker, he's got to cover. Strength, run defense, and power rush is really what killed him. The rest of the stuff he scores good in, but we score based on the Bengals, so we weight running and stuff.
In your realistic, I guess, optimistic perspective, what do you think the Bengals should do in their first 3 picks?
I'll tell you for a fact they're going to take an offensive tackle in the first round. That's what they've alluded to by constantly saying we're going to pick somebody for the future. They could take a defensive tackle and just say, hey, the Sims signing was a stopgap so this guy doesn't have to play right away. And maybe they cut Pecco or Sims, whoever loses that battle. But I'd say they'll go in the first 3 rounds, you're going to see offensive tackle, probably defensive tackle, linebacker, and receiver. That's where I see those 4 picks going.
Oh,
so,
okay. Name-wise, who is your ideal? What would be your ideal perfect draft name-wise?
Eddie Goldman in the first, Aguilar in the second. In the third, it's hard to say where guys will end up. So like in the second, if they go linebacker, like if one of the guys falls to them, like Stephon Anthony is a perfect fit for them, but I don't think he'll make it back there. Then they could go like James Hardy in the third, but DJ Humphries, Daryl Williams from the offensive tackle from Oklahoma. I think he's a really good fit for right tackle. And linebackers, they'll probably look at like Paul Dawson. I even graded linebackers. I can't even think about it. I'm trying to think of who will be there in round 3 if they wait that long for a linebacker. Rameek Wilson. Rameek Wilson is like a more athletic Ray Maluga. He's literally a clone. He can't really cover well, but he doesn't miss tackles. Absolutely not. Ben Heaney maybe. Tywin Jones. They brought him in. He's a guy that we're pretty high score on. Martrell Spate. Jake Ryan. Those are all guys they might go with in the third round.
Okay, that's not bad. Then they're feeling need on that one. What about you, AC? What you got?
See that?
What do I got for what?
Well, who would be your ideal first three picks, man? Name the names.
I'm gonna say the Brown kid out of Texas, the defensive tackle. I'm gonna say either your boy from Miami, Dorsett, or Aguilar out of USC in the second round. Probably a somewhat raw / project tackle with the first pick in the third, and then a tight end with the second pick in the third. That's probably my initial layout. Now, I don't know who falls into those areas. I'd probably need to examine that more. And if I do, I'd probably reassess exactly which position would go where. But I think you go off in some form. You go offensive tackle, you go wide receiver, you go tight end, and you go either linebacker, defensive tackle, or defensive end with those first 4 picks. I just think they've invested so heavily in free agency on the defensive side of the ball. I think there's still going to be some offensive players that are taken pretty early with their picks.
Yeah, I think the only thing is with the offensive tackles, like the raw guys to build it up, there's just not a lot of that in this draft. Like DJ Humphries is that guy, right? He played at like 270 pounds last year, came to the combine at just over 300. He put on 30 pounds since the season ended. But everyone knows he's not going to be able to keep that weight initially. He just showed he could carry it and still work out. But he's already getting talked about being in the late first, early second.
So you guys
first.
have Gresham coming back. What do you guys think on him? You guys don't think he should be brought back at all?
I think it's time for a fresh start. I'm over it. Even a cheap deal is okay, but I'd rather if they for 3 years. It's like 1-year deal if you want to prove it. His uncanny ability to fumble at inopportune times really frustrates me.
Yeah, I'm not opposed, but I'm not for it either. I don't know. I see positives and negatives to both. I think you could probably get a rookie that would be cheaper than Gresham that would probably have somewhat of the same impact. And I think at some point you got to tell Tyler Eifert, hey, you're the guy. You're the guy in this offense. You're one of our top guys. And as long as a guy like Gresham, high pick, first round pick, maybe making a little bit of money, as long as he's around, you're not going to give him that full opportunity. But as I've been saying over the past few weeks, I think this team needs to invest in the tight end position. If they get this Hausler guy, fine, but I still think they need to get another bigger guy in the draft. I just think that's a position group that needs some help. And if it's Gresham, great, but he better be healthy, and you better bring him back with him knowing that he's going to be the number 2, number 3 guy on this team at that position. And I don't know if he's willing to do that.
Yeah, and we also need to learn how to use them, man. I think we're not using our weapons. We're not utilizing our weapons properly as it is, so we have to find a way to get Gio in there. We have to find a way to do a lot of things, and yeah, we definitely need to find a way to make the tight end impactful.
It's our quarterback. There's limitations at the quarterback position. They can't exactly do some of the things they want to, but that's why I think Aguilar is a really good pick, because he can get yards after the catch. He's very sure-handed. He's smooth in his routes. He can take the top off the defense, and he's not scared to go over the middle, so he's a better complement to AJ. And you can just let AJ stay on the outside when he wants to, and just let Aguilar go in there and get nasty. I
really like Aguilar. You know, him and my boy Dorsett are the two I'd definitely be hoping we call for when our pick comes up.
Dorsett's just really hard to grade. We have a low grade on him, but it's hard to grade him, because they didn't have a quarterback the whole time he's there, so it's tough to see. Like, they pretty much just ran 9 routes with him, and like the couple times they run him on drags, he looks good, but there's just not enough there to. Like, if you're a team, you're taking a huge risk by taking him, but he's got Mike Wallace upside, right? But he's also got, huge bust potential because you don't know everything about him. And the Bengals just tend to play it safe. They'd rather not end up with home runs than end up with egg on their face. If you know what I mean, they'll take the safe pick. I really think they're going to try to trade back in the first, and they're going to try to end up with 3 third-round picks, and they're going to try to, and maybe even they try to trade back and get a next year's third-round pick or something to keep stacking this team. But I really think they're going to try to move back from 21 to Dallas or Denver, somewhere in that 20.
Yeah, I think we've missed the slot receiver a bit.
Saints have that.
Right.
Well,
Hawkins didn't really do what we thought he'd do in longevity, but I think Dorsett in the slot will be ideal, man. It'd be perfect. It'd be a position that he'd probably be perfect for because he's a little shifty guy. And yeah, I heard he's catching everything at his pro day, which is something he's improved on from his early days, because he couldn't catch a cold early in his career, but definitely improved on his hands, and his route running can get a little better, but man, that speed in the slot will be ideal.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. He's got huge upside, but I just don't think the Bengals will take him because of the risk. They just don't seem to do that. But maybe that's part of their change. They say we got some extra picks this year. Let's take a swing at a guy. Well, if you guys, we all liked Hawkins here. A guy that's really like Hawkins is Jamison Crowder. He probably won't even get drafted now because he's had like a Vontaze Burfict type of process where except for he's not doing bad, he's just physically not as gifted as people thought he was. But he's like Hawkins with a mean streak. He's nasty. And they could probably get him in the 7th round. He can just hide in the slot. He punt returns. He can kick return. He's a good player.
Oh yeah, definitely. Now you're speaking, because he can definitely be a steal. He reminds me of maybe like a T.Y. Hilton or something like that. Maybe not as good, but something in that range. He was really good in college, especially at Duke.
Yeah, and that's the thing is like he's not afraid. He's a small guy, and he's not afraid to go after bigger guys. He goes up and gets the ball. He's a good player. I think he'll be available pretty late, too.
All right, fellas. Sorry, I got to bail. I got a work call to be on, unfortunately. But good talking to you, Fatal. Good hearing from you, buddy.
All right, we'll see y'all next week.
You guys take it easy.
All right, see you guys.
All right, see ya. You headed off, Fatal?
Yeah, I'm about to head off, man. Get something to eat. I'm hungry as hell.
All right, I'll talk to you later.
All right, man. Take it easy, man.
Yep.